Invasion of the Body Snatchers wasn't just another sci-fi horror classic. It was a movie that shouldn't exist, a remake nobody wanted, a project the studio almost killed 3 times before cameras even rolled, and when it finally hit theaters in December 1978, it became the film that rewrote the rules on how scary a PG rating could be. But here's what most people don't realize. Behind that famous ending, behind Donald Sutherland's scream that still echoes in nightmares, is a production story soaked in panic, compromise, and buried footage. Deleted scenes that were deemed too disturbing, an alternate ending the studio begged for, practical effects so nauseating that crew members walked off set, cameos hidden like confessions, and a sound design so psychologically violent test audiences reported feeling physically ill. What you saw on screen, that was the sanitized version, the version they let you see. What you didn't see is the real nightmare, and that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. These are 15 creepy facts about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and hidden in them is the shocking truth about the ending Hollywood tried to bury, and the footage that may still be locked away somewhere. Waiting. Number 1. The studio never wanted this movie to exist. Not really. In the mid-1970s, remakes weren't the guaranteed cash grabs they are today. They were risky, disrespectful even, and remaking a beloved 1956 classic. That was borderline sacrilege. United Artists hesitated for years. The original Invasion of the Body Snatchers was already considered a masterpiece, a Cold War paranoia thriller disguised as science fiction. Why touch it? What could you possibly add? Director Philip Kaufman had an answer. He wanted to move the story from a small town to a major city, San Francisco. Millions of people, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The paranoia wouldn't be about your neighbor. It would be about everyone. Your boss, your lover, the stranger on the bus, the cop who's supposed to protect you. Kaufman pitched it as an update for the post-Watergate, post-Vietnam generation, a generation that already didn't trust authority. The studio listened. They were skeptical, but they gave him a tiny budget and told him to make it work. That decision, that reluctant green light, changed horror forever. But the battles were just beginning, because the ending Kaufman wanted, the studio hated it. And that's fact number 2. Number 2. The ending you know almost didn't happen. Picture this. It's late 1977. Philip Kaufman screens his final cut for United Artists executives. Lights come up. Silence. Cold, uncomfortable silence. The kind that fills a room like fog. Because the movie ends with Matthew Bennell, our hero, played by Donald Sutherland, pointing at the last surviving human and screaming. He's one of them now. He was replaced. There is no hope, no cavalry, no survival. Just that finger, that inhuman shriek, and then black. Credits roll while you sit there, stunned. The executives panic. Reports say they demanded changes, begged for a different ending, maybe a last-minute rescue, maybe a radio broadcast hinting that humanity is fighting back. Maybe, just maybe, a single shot of military planes flying overhead. Something, anything, a shred of hope to send audiences home with. Kaufman refused, flat out refused. He argued that the bleakness was the entire point, that the horror wasn't the pods, it was the idea that you could lose everything and no one would even notice. You'd just disappear, replaced by something wearing your face, and the world would keep spinning. Studio pushed back. Kaufman held firm. Weeks of arguments, cold phone calls, threats probably. But then something happened. Test screenings. Audiences didn't just accept the ending. They were destroyed by it. People sat frozen in their seats. Some cried, some laughed nervously, but nobody complained. Nobody asked for hope. They understood. The darkness was the point. The studio backed down, and that ending, hopeless, iconic, gut-punch ending, became the most talked about finale in horror history. Here's the thing. The ending wouldn't work without the scream. And that scream? It wasn't entirely human, which brings us to number 3. Number 3. Donald Sutherland's scream was engineered to break your brain. Sound designer Ben Burtt, the same genius who created the voices of R2-D2, Chewbacca, and the lightsaber hum, was brought in to make the pod scream unforgettable. Didn't just record Sutherland screaming. That would be too simple, too human. Instead, Burtt layered sounds underneath. Pig squeals, slowed down and distorted. The metallic scrape of industrial machinery. A sound like air escaping a pressurized chamber. Things your ears recognize on some primal level, but your brain can't identify. The result? A scream that feels alien, wrong, like it's coming from something that used to be human, but isn't anymore. Sutherland did take after take of that final scene, standing in the cold San Francisco fog, pointing, screaming until his throat was raw and bleeding. But Burtt needed more. He recorded Sutherland in a sound booth, isolated, screaming into high-end microphones that captured every crack in his voice. Then he twisted it, reversed it, layered it with animal sounds and mechanical groans. The final product bypasses your conscious mind entirely. You don't hear a scream. You feel a violation, and that violation follows you home. It echoes in your head while you're trying to sleep. That's not an accident. That's engineering. Psychological engineering. And the sound design doesn't stop there, because the next fact explains what they did to the pods themselves. Number 4. The pod sounds came from garbage trucks, real ones. Philip Kaufman was obsessed with making the pods feel organic and mechanical at the same time. Alive but industrial. Natural but wrong. The sound team recorded hydraulic garbage compactors in San Francisco alleys at 3 in the morning. That grinding, wheezing, almost breathing noise when a pod opens and a body emerges, that's trash being crushed. Specifically, the sound of a garbage truck's compactor cycling through wet refuse. They mixed it with slowed-down pig screams, reversed recordings of human breathing, air escaping a balloon stretched to the breaking point. The goal was to create a sound you'd never heard before, but one that triggered something ancient in your brain, something that said, run. Reports say Kaufman spent weeks in the sound booth, layering and adjusting until crew members started feeling physically uncomfortable, nauseous, anxious, unable to sit still. He wanted that discomfort, needed it, because if the crew felt sick, audiences would feel sick. Mission accomplished. But sound was only half the equation. The visual effects were just as disturbing, maybe more. And that's fact number 5. Number 5. The practical effects used rotting vegetables and real slime. No CGI existed in 1978. Everything you see on screen was built by hand, sculpted, molded, painted, and filled with things that shouldn't be inside a human body. The effects team created full body casts of the main actors. Then they filled those casts with a mixture of gelatin, corn syrup, ground up cauliflower, and, according to some crew accounts, actual rotting plant matter. The goal was to make the pod births look wet, organic, disgusting. The smell on set was unbearable. Crew members wore masks between takes. Ventilation fans ran constantly but couldn't keep up. One crew member reportedly vomited during the shooting of the dog with a human face scene. That image, the homeless man's face grafted onto a small dog's body, wasn't planned to be quite so horrifying. The effects team sculpted it almost as an afterthought. A quick, cheap effect to sell the idea that the pods didn't always get the proportions right. But when they pulled it out of the mold and saw it in person, silence. Sick, cold silence. Kaufman knew immediately. He shot it in low light. Let the camera linger just long enough for the wrongness to sink in. That scene almost got cut entirely. The studio thought it was too much, too disturbing for a PG movie, but Kaufman fought for it. And that image has been burned into the nightmares of millions ever since. Speaking of the rating, that's a whole story in itself. Number 6. The MPAA almost gave this film an X rating. Not for violence, not for nudity, not for language, for dread. The rating board watched Kaufman's cut and couldn't point to a single explicitly objectionable scene. No gore, no graphic content, but something was wrong. The whole movie felt like a violation. Reports say the MPAA debated for days. The pod transformation scenes were too long, too lingering. The ending was too hopeless. The sound design was too aggressive. Everything combined into an experience that felt, in the words of one reported screener, spiritually disturbing. Kaufman made small trims, shaved seconds off the most uncomfortable sequences, removed one shot of a half-formed pod face that reportedly made a screener leave the room mid-viewing. He adjusted the sound mix slightly, pulling back the most abrasive frequencies. The film squeaked by with a PG rating. Remember, this was 1978. PG could still mean something. PG could still terrify you, scar you, send you home changed. And this movie proved it. But even with the cuts, something slipped through. Something the MPAA couldn't edit out. The dread, the paranoia, the creeping certainty that everyone around you might already be gone. That made it to theaters intact. And it's never left us. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because the 1978 version wasn't just a remake, it was a conversation with the original. And that conversation is hidden in plain sight. Number 7. Two people from the 1956 original appear in this film. You might miss them both if you're not paying attention. Kevin McCarthy, the star of the first invasion of the Body Snatchers, shows up early in the 1978 film. He's running through traffic, wild-eyed, screaming about pods. He looks like a homeless man, a lunatic, easy to dismiss. But fans of the original recognized him instantly. That's his character. Miles Bennell, still running, still warning people. 30 years later, still being ignored. He even shouts the original film's most famous line, "They're coming, you're next." Then he gets hit by a car, and the movie moves on. It's a passing of the torch and a gut punch at the same time. The original hero is still fighting, and nobody believes him. Then there's Don Siegel, the director of the 1956 film, playing a cab driver who picks up Donald Sutherland. Watch his eyes. Listen to his voice. There's something off about him, something flat. He might already be a pod person. We never find out. Both cameos are easy to miss. Both carry enormous weight if you know the history. It's like the movie is whispering a terrible secret. This never ended. They never stopped. The original was just the beginning. And that paranoid thread runs through every frame of the 1978 version. It also runs through the casting. Which brings us to number 8. Number 8. Leonard Nimoy was cast specifically to betray you. Think about what Leonard Nimoy meant in 1978. He was Spock, the logical one, the guy who always figured things out, who always stayed calm, who always found the answer when everyone else was panicking. He was safety. He was reason. And Philip Kaufman wanted to weaponize that. Nimoy's character, psychiatrist David Kibner, seems like the voice of sanity at first. Calm, reassuring, the one person who might actually help. He tells Elizabeth that her paranoia is just stress. He tells Matthew that there's a rational explanation for everything. He makes you relax, makes you trust him. And then the mask drops. Those calm eyes go flat. That reassuring voice turns cold. And you realize he's been one of them the whole time, maybe from the beginning. Nimoy understood the trick, played the role warm and gentle on purpose, making audiences lean in before pulling the rug out. In interviews, he talked about how much he enjoyed subverting expectations, being the villain hidden behind the hero's face. That betrayal, that exploitation of audience trust, was calculated down to the syllable. And it works because Nimoy commits completely. You believe him right up until the moment you can't anymore. And by then, it's too late. Just like for the characters in the film. That kind of deliberate manipulation extended to every aspect of production, including the location. Number 9. San Francisco wasn't just a backdrop, it was a weapon. Kaufman chose the city deliberately, not for its beauty, for its fog. San Francisco's fog season rolls in cold and wet, swallowing entire neighborhoods in gray nothing. Landmarks disappear. Streets turn into tunnels. People emerge from the mist like ghosts. Kaufman shot during peak fog season and chased weather whenever possible. If fog rolled in unexpectedly, the crew grabbed cameras and ran outside. Some of the most haunting shots in the film weren't planned. They were stolen. Streetlights eaten by gray, the skyline erasing itself. People walking into white nothing and never coming back. The city itself becomes a character, one that's slowly being consumed, just like the humans inside it. But shooting in a real city meant real problems. Traffic, permits, noise complaints, curious crowds wandering into shots. One scene required shutting down a busy intersection at 2 a.m. Neighbors called the police to report screaming. Real screaming. Crew members had to explain they were making a movie. The cops didn't seem convinced. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here's a film about people who scream for help and get ignored. And the real screams during production got ignored too. San Francisco gave the movie its soul. And it nearly gave the production a nervous breakdown. Speaking of breakdowns, number 10. Jeff Goldblum was injured on set. Production pushed actors to their physical limits. And sometimes those limits pushed back. During one sequence, Goldblum had to run through a real greenhouse at night. Wet floors, shattered glass, sharp metal frames everywhere. Low light meant he couldn't see his footing. He slipped hard, cut his hand badly enough that production stopped while they cleaned him up and assessed the damage. Reports say Goldblum wanted to keep going. No complaints, just bandage it and move on. Knew the energy Kaufman wanted. Real panic, real desperation, real fear, and he was willing to bleed for it. Watch the greenhouse scenes closely. That sweat on Goldblum's face isn't acting. That tension in his movements isn't performance. Some of it is genuine pain, genuine fear of slipping again. Kaufman kept the cameras rolling through everything, used whatever he got. That rawness made the final cut. Goldblum later described the shoot as one of the most intense experiences of his career. Cold nights, endless hours. A director who demanded authenticity and wouldn't accept anything less. The entire cast felt it, and the entire cast delivered. But the production didn't have the budget to support that kind of ambition, which is fact number 11. Number 11. The entire movie was made for less than $3.5 million. Adjust for inflation, and that's still nothing for a studio sci-fi film. Kaufman had to stretch every dollar until it screamed. The pod props were recycled and repainted between takes. If something looked cheap, they shot it in shadow or fog. Fog became the great equalizer. It hid mistakes, created atmosphere, and cost almost nothing. The effects team worked miracles with gelatin, rubber, and desperation. Costumes were pulled from thrift stores. Sets were real locations whenever possible. Every crew member wore multiple hats. Every day was a tightrope walk over a canyon of bankruptcy. And here's the crazy part. Nobody expected it to work. The studio released the film without much fanfare in December 1978. No massive marketing campaign, no blockbuster positioning, just a quiet release and crossed fingers. Then the reviews came in. Then the word of mouth spread. The film made over $24 million at the box office. That's nearly a 7-to-1 return on investment. It proved that smart horror, atmospheric, psychological, dread-soaked horror didn't need a huge budget. It needed vision, it needed commitment, and it needed a director willing to fight for the darkness. But during production, none of that was guaranteed. Every day was a gamble. Every effect was a prayer. And somehow, that desperation leaked into the film itself. You can feel it, the anxiety, the improvisation, the edge of disaster energy. It's baked into every frame, and that energy is why the movie still holds up almost 50 years later. Now, let's talk about what you don't see. Number 12. Robert Duvall appears in this movie, uncredited, unexplained, deeply unsettling. Early in the film, there's a priest sitting alone on a playground swing. No dialogue, no context. Just a man in black swaying gently back and forth while children play nearby. That's Robert Duvall, one of the greatest actors of his generation, doing a silent cameo as a favor to Philip Kaufman. Here's what makes it creepy. Kaufman never explained the scene. Not in interviews. Not in commentary. Not ever. Is the priest already a pod? Is he the last real human in that park, having a crisis of faith before the end? Is he watching the children, knowing what's about to happen to them? We don't know. We can't know. And that ambiguity is the point. Kaufman wanted the movie filled with unanswered questions, moments that felt wrong but couldn't be explained. A priest on a swing, silent, watching. And you watched him and felt something, even if you couldn't say what. That kind of hidden unease is everywhere in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Blink, and you miss a detail. Look too closely, and you see too much. It's a film that rewards paranoia, just like life in 1978. Just like life now. Number 13. The film was released into a culture already primed for paranoia. Think about what America had just lived through. Vietnam, Watergate, assassinations, the revelation that the government had been lying for decades about almost everything. Trusted neighbors wasn't much better. People were already asking, who can I believe? Who's really on my side? Is anyone telling the truth? Invasion of the Body Snatchers didn't create that paranoia. It weaponized it. The pods weren't communists like the 1956 version implied. They weren't any political ideology at all. They were conformity itself. The pressure to be normal, to fit in, to stop fighting and just go along. Sleep. Give up. Become like everyone else. That message hit audiences hard in 1978. And it hits harder now when social media rewards sameness and punishes difference. When algorithms push us toward the average. When being yourself feels exhausting and being a pod seems easier. The film wasn't just a horror movie, it was a warning, and we're still not listening, which is why the next fact matters so much. Number 14. Number 14, critics loved it. Audiences loved it, but the studio almost buried it anyway. Here's the dirty secret of Hollywood. Studios don't always know what they have. They looked at Invasion of the Body Snatchers and saw risk. A remake nobody asked for. A bleak ending, disturbing imagery, a PG rating that felt like a trick. They released it in December 1978 with minimal fanfare, almost like they were embarrassed by it. No huge premiere, no massive ad campaign. Just a quiet rollout and hope for the best. Word of mouth saved it. Critics championed it. Roger Ebert called it one of the best films of 1978. Audiences told their friends, who told their friends, who told their friends. The film became a slow burn success, then a genuine phenomenon, then a classic. It proved that quality wins eventually, even when studios don't believe in their own product. But it almost didn't happen. One different decision, a smaller release, less patience, a panicked re-edit, and this movie might have vanished. Another buried treasure, lost to corporate cowardice. Instead, it survived, thrived, became eternal. And that's almost enough. Almost. But there's one more fact. The most disturbing one. Number 15. There is reportedly footage that never made it to the public. Early assembly cuts ran longer, much longer, darker, slower, more explicit in ways that made even the hardened crew uncomfortable. According to production accounts, there were extended sequences of San Francisco emptying out, streets going silent, businesses closing, entire neighborhoods falling quiet as the pod spread. More transformation scenes, longer, more detailed shots of bodies being copied and discarded. A full, uncut version of the dog-man hybrid that showed its creation from start to finish. And this is the one that haunts collectors. Reportedly an alternate take of the final scene. Same scream, different angle, even more brutal in its implications. Where did that footage go? Some say it was destroyed, too disturbing to exist. Some say it's locked in a vault somewhere, protected or forgotten. Some say copies floated around in private collections for years before disappearing entirely. We don't know for sure. What we do know is that the theatrical cut already pushed limits, already made audiences sick, already traumatized a generation. So imagine what they had to leave behind. Imagine what was too much even for this movie. That thought lingers. That's the real horror. Not what's on screen, but what isn't. What's still out there, what might never be seen, and what that says about how far Kaufman was willing to go. Invasion of the Body Snatchers nearly didn't happen, not the way we know it. A studio wanted hope. A director demanded despair. Actors bled for their shots. Sound designers crafted nightmares from pig squeals and garbage trucks. Effects artists sculpted horror from rotting vegetables and corn syrup. And somewhere, locked in a vault, burned in a fire, lost in a move, stolen by a collector, there's footage even darker than what made the final cut. Footage that might rewrite everything we think we know about this film. The movie works because it feels like a warning that almost got silenced. Every compromise the studio wanted was rejected. Every safe choice was refused. What survived was pure dread, uncut, unapologetic, and absolutely relentless. And that's why, almost 50 years later, we're still watching, still analyzing, still looking over our shoulders when the fog rolls in, still wondering if the person next to us is really who they say they are. The pods didn't win in the movie, but the paranoia, that's still spreading, one viewer at a time. Thanks for watching. Hit like, drop a comment with your favorite fact, and subscribe for more creepy movie secrets. The truth is out there. Sometimes it's just locked away, waiting.